Well, ladies and gentlemen, I want to give you a little report on some of the things I've been doing. One of them was that March 10th, I gained admission to a meeting at the State Department. Now, please don't anybody think that I've sold out. Right? I found out about a meeting of a group called the Advisory Committee on International Economic Policy, ACIEP. And this was going to be held at the State Department, and I had to get press credentials in order to go to it. So I followed all the procedures, and lo and behold, they came back and said, yes, you'll be accepted, and there'll be a badge for you at the State Department when you get there. So I went, and there were approximately 50 people at the room. And it was a very pretty room in the first floor of the State Department, nice, very, very well appointed, big circular table, about 20 people sitting around. And around three of the walls, chairs for people like me come in there. So I come in and I sat down, and every chair had a package of papers there, and I started reading through the papers. And all of a sudden I hear a voice saying, "Jack, how are you?" I looked up and it was Jerome Corsi. So Jerome and I sat through 2 hours of Council on Foreign Relations people from the State Department, from the Commerce Department. We had people there from the Chamber of Commerce, from the National Association of Manufacturers, and these people are all promoting the Security and Prosperity Partnership and joining that with the European Union. It was quite a deal. Now, the papers that they passed out, a lot of them were biographies of the participants, and the chief participant at this meeting was a D.C. lawyer named Kassinger, not Kissinger, but Kassinger. And on his bio, he proudly mentioned he's a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, as did several of the other participants at the meeting. So here I am sitting there, and Jerome and I are sitting there grimacing, and they're going on and they're talking about what they're going to be doing. Now, it turns out that in 2007, there was a meeting held with Angela Merkel of Germany, Barroso of the European Union, and President Bush, and they formed a thing called the Framework for Carrying Out the Mission that they had decided. It's the framework for undoing sovereignty. It's the framework for doing everything that we're opposed to. So Jerome and I are taking notes along the way, and some of the things that were said are, just imagine, the framework has put the United States and the European Union on a joint path toward further transatlantic economic integration. All right. Now, they use the word integration. Go to your dictionary when you go home. Look up integration. What does it say? It says make as one. Right? That's what your dictionary says. And you can find the word community. And community is also make as one. So here they're pretty bold about what they intended to do, and they were all among friends. I mean, they were very open about what they were saying, and we're in close contact with the European Union. We have great hopes for more U.S.-EU discussions. We want to reduce and harmonize regulatory burdens. Harmonization is another word that they use. You know, community, integration, harmonization, on and go. One speaker said it would be wise not to refer to what they were doing as NAFTA Plus. Don't say it's NAFTA Plus, because it is. Another one said SPP builds on NAFTA. Well, we've seen that from some other people. The security aspect of the SPP is being directed by the Department of Homeland Security. The prosperity aspect is being directed by the Department of Commerce. There were quite a few references to progress already achieved, both within the SPP and this new thing they call the TEC, the Transatlantic Economic Community. Right? Transatlantic Economic Community. That means join what we are here after we form the North American Union, and we'll join that with the European Union. Now, if you know anything about the European Union, you know that 27 nations have given up their sovereignty. It's as simple as that. One participant said, together, the North America and EU nations add up to 11% of the world's population and 57% of the world's gross domestic product. And he was very unhappy about that. Right? In other words, he wants our gross domestic product to go down and everybody else's to come up. Another stated it was great progress when the North American Competitiveness Council was launched at the Montebello SPP meeting last August. The North American Competitiveness Council is these big corporations that are promoting this. And why are they promoting all of this? Because they want a monopoly. And that's what it's aiming for. They want very much. There are 17 major corporations in this North American Competitiveness Council. One speaker mentioned the goal of defusing potential terrorism by creating jobs for young people who might become terrorists. Now, this is to say that terrorism rises up from the poor people in a community who have no jobs, which is absolute rubbish, right? Terrorism, it's like the old Civil Rights Day. It doesn't come from there. It comes from the top. And so this fellow, who is a retired U.S. Army general, West Point grad, who was number one man in his class, is now working for the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. And he was just delighted because he's working on setting up job programs in Pakistan and other job programs in the Philippines in order to keep poor people from becoming terrorists. And he may have very well believed that. I don't know. Number one man in West Point, maybe he's not that bright. I don't know. So toward the end of the program, it's 2 hours long, about 15 minutes left, and they had already started asking if anybody had any questions. And so the guy from the NAM got up and told how happy he was about this. I was thinking of your dad, how much he loved the NAM, the National Association of Manufacturers. And here these people are all sellouts now. They're all sellouts. He knew that before he passed on. So I stood up, I raised my hand, and the guy recognized me. And I stood up and I said, "I'm John McManus from the New American Magazine. I want to note that several million jobs have been lost since NAFTA, which many feel is somewhat responsible for these developments. And I note that no one from Congress is in attendance at this meeting. So I have two questions. My first question, do the Security and Prosperity Partnership and the Transatlantic Economic Community derive their authorization from NAFTA to move ahead and tie the United States with more rules and regulations? And my second question is, some Europeans, former German President Herzog, for example, has noted that as much as 80% of the laws being enacted in their countries stem from the EU and Brussels. And does this committee intend to duplicate for the United States what is occurring at the European Union? Well, by this time, everybody in the place is looking at me, right? So Mr. Kassinger of the Council on Foreign Relations says, you'll have to ask those questions after the meeting. Next question. Now, he also said at the beginning of the meeting, and I forgot to mention this, that this meeting would be conducted according to Chatham House rules. Now, I don't know that everybody here knows what that means. But in 1921, when the Council on Foreign Relations was set up, it was set up after a meeting that had been held in Paris by Edward Mandell House, John Foster Dulles, Allen Dulles, Walter Lippmann, Christian Herter, and a few others. They set up the Council on Foreign Relations for the United States and the Royal Institute for International Affairs in England. They were both conceived at that meeting in 1919. Took effect in the U.S. in 1921. The Royal Institute for International Affairs meets at a place called Chatham House. And so here they had adopted Chatham House rules. And he explained, the Chatham House rules are, you're not allowed to attribute anything that is said at the meeting to any person. You can say what was said, possibly, if you're a journalist, but you can't attribute it to any person. Well, I didn't care about that. I didn't care about which person said which bit of treachery and treason that they were going on. I was just going to report on the treachery and the treason, right? So he reminded me when he pointed to me, he said, well, you realize, of course, and he went like this, we operate here under Chatham House rules, and you'll have to ask those questions afterwards. Next question, right? So after the meeting was over, 2 hours, he beat it out of there, right? And there was an assistant secretary of state, a young fellow named Sullivan, I think his name was, Georgetown graduate. I'm sure he got his brains laundered down there. So I waited around to go and speak to Mr. Sullivan. And he had participated in the meeting, and he was a very rising young trader, I guess we could say. So I waited and I waited, and there were a group of people around. All of a sudden, this tall State Department aficionado came over and stood by me. And he said, do you intend to ask questions of Mr. Sullivan? I said, yes, I do. And I started walking over towards Mr. Sullivan. He walked along right alongside me. He stayed right with me the whole time. I asked Sullivan the same questions I had asked that hadn't been answered. He danced all around them, and I found out I wasn't going to get anywhere with this guy. And I handed him a copy of the Merger in the Making issue of the New American Magazine, and I pointed to the flag on the front, and I said, here's what you people are up to. I said, please take this magazine home, read it, and share it with your colleagues, would you please? He said, well, I'll be happy to do that. Thank you very much. Right? At that point, I left, and the tall aficionado from the State Department followed me right out the door. It was eerie. I left there, and I felt like going to take a bath. Right? But that's what they're up to. Now, what did I say? I said the Security Prosperity Partnership is moving ahead. I've already announced, did I say it here at this meeting? They've changed the name. Right? Now it's the Summit of North American, the North American Leaders Summit. Right? And they're having a meeting in New Orleans beginning next Monday, a week from Monday, and I'll be there. I got press credentials again. I found out how to get press credentials. But anyhow, ladies and gentlemen, these people mean business. And it might have had some effect on some of them to find out that there was somebody asking some pointed questions. It certainly didn't stop what they intend, but it might give them some pause for concern. And if we accomplish that, then we've accomplished something, right?